Hi and welcome, I'm Gavin Lon. This is the sixth part in a video series dedicated to building a shopping cart application using Blazor WebAssembly on .NET 6. So, we have created three workflows. Let's recap. The first workflow involves retrieving product data from the database and displaying the product data to the user in an aesthetically pleasing style. The second workflow involves retrieving details for an individual product and displaying the relevant details in an aesthetically pleasing style to the user. The third workflow involves the user adding a product to the user's shopping cart and the user being navigated to a screen that displays a list of products contained within the user's shopping cart. In this video, we'll create the workflow that involves a user removing a product from the user's shopping cart. For content like this and much more, please consider subscribing, and please ring the bell so as to be notified of future content. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and please feel free to share this video with anyone you feel may benefit from its content. If you'd like to thank me by buying me a coffee, I've included a link to my Buy Me a Coffee webpage. Any support is greatly appreciated. Let's get started. Let's start by implementing this server-side code. Let's go to our shoponline.api project and open the shopping cart repository.cs file. Let's implement the code logic for the delete item method. So we can use the ID value that will be passed into this method to find the entity that we wish to delete from the cart items database table. We are using the findAsync method to find the relevant entity using the primary key field, which is the ID field. If we find the relevant entity, if the item returned from the findAsync method is not null, we can use the remove method to remove the relevant entity from the cart items database table. Then we mustn't forget to call the saveChangesAsync method to commit the relevant change to our database. In order to make this delete functionality available to calling client code, let's create an appropriate endpoint within our Web API component. So let's go to the shopping cart controller class and create an appropriate action method that will call the relevant delete item method that we have just implemented in the shopping cart repository class. Let's decorate our delete item action method with an attribute that declares that this action method corresponds to the HTTP delete verb. So far in the development of our application, we have created endpoints that correspond to both the get and post HTTP verbs. We are about to implement the logic for an endpoint that corresponds to the delete HTTP verb. Let's declare the relevant root template information for our action method by passing an appropriate string argument to the HTTP delete attribute. This information includes a definition for the ID that needs to be part of the URI, Universal Resource Identifier, pertaining to the entity that a client wishes to delete. So we are essentially enabling a calling client to delete a specific resource from the system. Let's create a try-catch block A simple way to create the relevant code for this is to type try followed by pressing the tab key twice. Let's call the deleteItem method on the shopping cart repository object that will be injected into the constructor of this controller class at runtime. If the entity that the client wishes to delete cannot be found, we want code to execute that returns a HTTP response code of not found 404 to the client. The information that we want transferred across the network for the relevant entity that the client wishes to delete is of type CartItemDTO and not the type CartItem that is returned from the deleteItem method called on the shopping cart repository object. In the previous part of this video series, part 5, we implemented an extension method overload named ConvertToDTO within the DTO conversions class. This extension method can be called on any object of type CartItem. Before we appropriately call the ConvertToDTO extension method, we must retrieve the relevant product entity from the database, so let's write the code to achieve this. Then let's call the ConvertToDTO method on the object of type CartItem, returned from the shopping cart repository class's deleteItem method, to convert the relevant object of type CartItem to an object of type CartItemDTO. Then let's write code to return a HTTP response code of OK200 to the client along with the relevant object of type CartItemDTO. Let's complete this method by writing code that executes if for some reason an exception is thrown during the execution of the code logic within the deleteItemAction method. Let's go to our Blazor component. So let's go to the shoponline.web project. Let's add an appropriate new method definition to the iShoppingCart service interface named deleteItem. Let's open the shopping cart service class and implement the code logic for the deleteItem method. If the HTTP response code returned from the server falls within the success range, we want code to execute that returns an object of type CartItemDTO to the calling code. If the call to the server is not successful, we want null to be returned to the calling code. Let's open the shopping cart base class within the Pages folder. Let's implement code for a method that handles a button click event. So this method will be called when a user clicks a delete button that we'll create in a bit in the shoppingcart.razor file. Let's appropriately call the deleteItem method on the shopping cart service object that will be injected into our Razor component at runtime. So this code will call the appropriate action method on the server side that will delete the relevant entity, cart item from our database. So we want the results of this deletion operation to be reflected on the user interface, which means we need the shopping cart razor component to re-render once a deletion operation has completed successfully. We could call the appropriate getItems method and retrieve all the relevant shopping cart items that are currently saved to our database for the relevant user and assign the results to the shopping cart items property. And the result of the deletion operation would then appropriately be reflected on the UI. However, we can implement code for a solution that will be more performant for this purpose than the solution that I've just expressed, i.e., that involves an additional call to the server-side code. We can reflect the results of a deletion operation on the UI by simply deleting the relevant cart item object from the client-side collection of cart items referenced by our shopping cart items property. By deleting the relevant item from the client-side collection, we are avoiding a trip, as it were, to the server side. This could result in a significant performance benefit. So let's create a private method responsible for removing the relevant item from the client-side shopping cart items collection. We first need a variable that references the object within the shopping cart items collection that we wish to delete. So let's create another private method that contains code for returning a specific object within the shopping cart items collection. Let's then call our new private method to return the object that we wish to delete from the shopping cart items collection to our remove cart item method. We can then implement code to delete the relevant item from the relevant client-side shopping cart items collection. But there is a problem with this at the moment. Our client-side collection stored within the shopping cart items property is currently of type IEnumerable. The IEnumerable type is fine for when we need to traverse through the items in the relevant collection, but we don't currently have an easy way available to us to remove an item from the relevant client-side collection. One solution to this problem is that we can change the type of our client-side collection to type list. We must also appropriately change the return type of the delete item method definition in the shopping cart service interface, and of course we must also appropriately change the return type for the implementation of this method in the shopping cart service class. Let's go back to the shopping cart base class and use the remove method on the shopping cart items collection, which is now of type list, to remove the relevant item from the relevant client-side collection. Let's appropriately call our remove cart item method from within the delete cart item underscore click event handler method. Let's create the delete button within the shoppingcart.razor file. Let's use Blazor's @onClick syntax to ensure that our delete cart item underscore click functionality is triggered when the user clicks our new button. Let's run the code and test our method. Great. Okay, so I don't like this empty screen displayed to the user here when the user no longer has any cart items saved to the user's shopping cart. So let's ensure that status information is outputted to the user for the case where the user's shopping cart is empty. So we can do this by using the count method. So if the count method returns a value greater than 0, we can output the data contained within the shopping cart items property, as well as the relevant shopping cart summary information. Else, let's output a basic message to the user informing the user that the user's shopping cart is empty. Let's run the code. Great. So I think rather than display the text remove on the relevant button, I think the standard trash icon would look better. Let's use Font Awesome for this purpose. I'm going to use an appropriate CDN, Cloud Delivery Network link, to reference the relevant Font Awesome CSS file. If you'd like to read more about CDN, I've included an appropriate link below in the description. So if we go to this website, we can copy the relevant link here, and we can then paste it into our index.html file in order to include font awesome icons within our application. We are now able to reference the font awesome trash icon like this to display the trash icon on our delete button. Excellent! I hope you have enjoyed this video. I look forward to presenting the next video in this series, where we'll continue to develop our shopping cart application. We are going to implement the update quantity functionality in the next video. For content like this and much more, please consider subscribing, and please ring the bell so as to be notified of future content. If you liked this video, please hit the like button, and please feel free to share this video with anyone you feel may benefit from its content. If you'd like to thank me by buying me a coffee, I've included a link to my Buy Me a Coffee webpage. I've also included a PayPal Me link that you can use to support the channel via PayPal. Any support is greatly appreciated. A special thank you to those who have been kind enough to support the channel. It is greatly appreciated. I really enjoy engaging with you in the comments section, so please feel free to leave a comment. The latest code can be found on GitHub. A link to the relevant repository has been included below in the description. Thank you, and take care.